All right, it's time to finish up assignment 2. I've got all the refinements I need on this top part, but now we just got to clean up the bottom. Now we know all the elements we're keeping. So now it's time to invest that focus. So the first thing, use the auto select, find the layers you need. If you want proof that you need them, you can turn them on and off. You can see what's affected. You could just go in with your eraser at 100%, software needed. And erase out. It's got this little fluffy tail. It's very soft. I'm going to give it a wide berth. And in some instances where the color differential, like around this tail, isn't very distinct, and the contrast isn't very distinct, that might be a good way to go. Just cutting out by hand and then refining. But where it is very different, like this bright green, doing like what we did for the flowers. My favorite selection tool is the magic wand. I find it's more predictable than the quick selection tool or some of the others we have. So I select all of that, and instead of just hitting delete, because this is a soft texture here, I'm going to click on Refine Edge. I'm allowing it to grow the radius of my selection by 5 pixels, or rather by about 1/3 of 5 pixels, and feather it across 2 pixels, not smoothing it at all. And that's going to get a lot of those hairs. It's going to kind of draw them for me. So then when I delete, it will be nice and soft. And it won't be so, you see the difference. This is unselected and unerased, and that's erased out. So not so hard to refine. Now let me do that with these layers, which are separate layers. You can only delete from one layer at a time. Your selections can only affect one layer at a time. Whoops. Okay, then refine edge. Remember, it remembers my settings, so I don't need to reset it each time. And delete. That will help me with the blending. And now this layer. And your full project is only as strong as its weakest area. So I haven't given it a lot of attention to these legs, and so now I just need to finish those off. Then it should all work pretty well. You think of the last time you stared at something's feet, though. You'll realize that this is maybe the smartest area to leave to the end. The head and the antlers and the foliage, definitely more of a focal point than what I'm leaving to the last few minutes. Okay, so I'm still at 100% opacity, just taking off the rough edges. I don't want to leave little remnants accidentally. Then once I'm happy with the overall shapes of the cutouts, then I'll go to lower opacities to soften it. And we want the entire creature, the entire fantasy creature design from head to toe. We don't want any ground, we don't want any shadow, because we're going to be putting them into other environments. And I'm going to show you how we test that as we finalize cleaning it up. Because no matter how good you are at selecting and refining and cleaning your work, you leave little residue behind that makes compositing this into a setting really difficult. So right now we just have a white background, or I just have a white background behind mine with my sketch turned off. You should definitely have your sketch turned off at this point so you're not confused by it. but I'm going to change that shortly to a gray, a middle gray, because a lot of my remnants might be bright white or hard to see on this white background. I'm going to show you one other tool that we haven't talked about, which is dodge and burn. Not dodge and burn, we've talked about that, which is the sponge tool. And most of my reference has not been compromised in terms of color. It's been pretty flat coloring. But this Clydesdale, there's so much green that you can see the green reflected in the midtones, and so I need to desaturate that green just in those areas. So to do that, it's just on this one reference layer. I'm going to go underneath the dodge and burn tool to the sponge tool, and I'm going to turn its mode to desaturate mode. Big soft brush again. And what this does is it doesn't lighten or darken. Instead, you can see how it's kind of taking some of that green out. It's a tool that just takes the color out. If you have it on desaturate, I'm going to take it out of the tail too. I don't want to take all the color out, but I want to take any of that weird green glow. And then I'll use the burn tool selectively just in the midtones to deepen those tones. Let that reflected light kind of disappear from the green. And I'm going to do it around the feet too. You see that green really showing up. I'll use the sponge. A little bit more targeted here. Sponge is a little bit weaker tool, so I can use that above 30. And knock that green back a bit before I soften it more. A little bit on this too. Now if you use the sponge too much, you'll just get to middle gray, which isn't very exciting. But I just want to use it enough to knock that green out where it doesn't make sense. Okay, so it's looking pretty strong. So now I know I have some work to do, but how can I see those edges better? Well, if I turn off the background, I can't see all the floating debris. But what if I change the background's color? So let's duplicate the background and then say edit fill with 50% gray. There it shows me a remnant I have of a layer here that I need to get rid of, right? I'll get a much cleaner line if I just erase that out. And this is much more like putting it into, let's try it this way. Putting it into a setting. You see, the gray stands in for whatever environment I might put it in. And it will show me the edges on all of my creature at all these sides. So where I have some shadows that I might soften a little bit more, some edges that are still a little too crisp. Lets me take care of that. Some edges that are too soft. So I'll go for a harder edged eraser here. Make a more defined edge. Oops. The history is for. So I'm using the auto select layer, the move tool, to really distinguish between these. And then I'll show you my secret weapon at the very end for edges that just aren't working. I go to the very top, I make a new blank layer. I'm gonna label it red, and I'm gonna call it the clone stamp layer. This is something we're gonna be doing a lot pretty soon. We've used this briefly, I showed it early on. But when you just don't have the reference to make a transition, you can clone stamp from all layers. You know, at a 70% opacity is pretty good, nice soft brush, and I can just copy it from there and paint it over the top and bridge these edges just by painting the textures over themselves. Work between them. Anywhere where it's just not really holding up. Now you don't want to over-rely on this because it's just another form of copying and pasting. But when you need it, works like a dream. So if I want to bring a little bit of this out, transition this a little bit more smoothly. I've already done all I can with the other tools. Instead of just erasing, I can actually clone stamp it in. Clone stamp that color, but be careful of hard edges. In this case, I don't actually have to because I have the overlap I need. But if you don't, you can create new pixels with clone stamping. Very helpful. All right, so these are the finishing techniques. I'm going to sponge this tail and cut it out. And then I'm going to save this as a PSD file for myself, and then as a PNG file with the background turned off, so that what I upload is just the creature, no background at all. So that it's easy to composite into a background in assignment 3. The best way to prepare for assignment 3 is to just do your very best to be happy with your fantasy landscape from assignment 1 and your fantasy creature, especially making sure it's cut out cleanly from assignment 2. Because assignment 3 is just putting them together. And it's not quite as simple as it sounds. We still need to match the coloring and the lighting. Of the creature to match the setting we need. But if you've done a good job with the creature design and the setting design, it really doesn't take that much effort. Be careful to be erasing from the right layer here. Okay, so I don't have enough overlap here, so this is a great opportunity for clone stamp. I'm going to go to the very top layer above everything else. Go to clone stamp from all layers. Nice and soft, low opacity. Work on that hard edge. Blend it out. Steal color and everything from a few different places. That green still persists. I can steal shadow tones from others. This is just all on the clone stamp layer. And I can add it in. Really softly.